I'm Joe Halco, Director of Community Relations for Northwestern Counseling and Support Services, and welcome to another episode of NCSS Here for You. Northwestern Counseling and Support Services has been providing access to high-quality services which promote healthy living and emotional well-being to the residents of Franklin and Grand Isle counties. Over the years, as the needs of the community have changed, so too have the programs and services that we make available to assist children, adolescents, adults, families, and seniors. We take our role in the community seriously and strive to provide a continuum of the highest quality services to meet the needs of individuals who at any point seek assistance. In this episode, we will be talking about the Parent-Child Center of NCSS, which is located within the NCSS Ted Mabel Family Center and consists of 4 core teams operating 20 primary prevention programs throughout Franklin and Grand Isle counties. Parent-Child Centers help families make sure that children get off to a healthy start. Services include almost anything that families would need, such as early childhood services, home visits to families with young children, play groups, parent education, parent support, and information and referrals. To discuss the Parent-Child Center of NCSS in greater detail, I'm pleased to introduce this month's guest, Margaret Walsh, who is the Parent-Child Center Program Manager. Margaret, it's great to have you on the program. Welcome. And also, I need to say congratulations with this really being a new role for you within, the past month or two?
A couple months, yeah. I think we're going on month 3.
Yeah, and I mean, you've been with NCSS much longer, but the point being that you now are the new program manager for the Parent-Child Center, which you have a lot of experience with. So
That's right.
It's an awesome hire from that standpoint.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I'm learning a lot.
There is a lot to, as we will discuss today. There's so much that the Parent-Child Center does for the community, and it's one of those situations where, you know, a vast majority of it, most of it is all happening within the community, where
right.
a lot of people think everything happens within our 4 walls, which certainly is not the case. So, first, let's talk about what is a Parent-Child Center and what are some of the common misconceptions about Parent-Child Centers?
Sure. So a Parent-Child Center is a local service hub for families to access any range of services that they need, regardless of socioeconomic status or family status. There's actually 15 Parent-Child Centers across the state of Vermont, and we're one of those, embedded within a local designated our mental health agency. So that sort of gives us a leg up to sort of connect with other community partners and provide sort of an array of services beyond PCCs. But it's really sort of the 8 core services are to provide safe and nurturing environments across the board, wherever families are at. To your point, is it in the community? Is it at their home? Is it at a library? So there are several places that we can provide the services, in addition to some real concrete supports that we can offer families, like diapers and wipes and grocery cards and gas cards. And so it's home visiting, but it's also a range of supports and services. And to your point about the question around common misconceptions. So I think one of the common misconceptions is that you hear Parent-Child Center and you think that we're a child care center.
Yes.
And so our particular Parent-Child Center is not, but there are several others across the state that are. I think another misconception that or at least an assumption is that we operate in isolation, which isn't true, because we often are found at the State House. You know, even the session I went down about a week ago to really advocate for the funding that funds all of these great programs. And so we're part of a DA, we're part of an advocacy network, and we are not a child care, but we partner really well with child care programs.
And you know, one of the things that you did mention, and I think is important, is that even though there are the 15 Parent-Child Centers throughout the state of Vermont, as you noted, this particular one for Franklin Grand Isle counties is the only one that's embedded as part of the designated mental health agency, which, to your point, allows us, or allows our staff, the ability to really seamlessly provide the family with even more services without having to, or before going out and perhaps navigating other organizations throughout the community that wrap services around a family. So
Yeah.
I guess my point is that it really allows NCSS and the Parent-Child Center of NCSS to kind of navigate the system and to more seamlessly help families in need.
Yeah, absolutely. I think anytime we can do a warm handoff for a family and provide the coordination of services and that case management, then the family has a little bit more room to breathe and sort of explore what are the other, maybe it's bonding and connection that they're working on, and they don't have to think about who do I have to call, what number do I have to memorize. It's all within house. So an example of this is, maybe our early intervention program is coordinating with a school who's coordinating with a home school coordinator or community based support person. And so those seamless transitions can happen within NCSS, or if they're looking for a home and community based support once they turn 6 or they graduate sort of within the program that they're in, and the family says, I'm actually not ready to discharge, I'm really looking for additional supports, we can guide them in that direction, and that's worked well for years.
Now, so let's talk about how all of these parent-child centers throughout the state are similar. You had mentioned that in our particular case, part of it is not a child care center, but all the other programs are available. So, when you look at the landscape of all of the parent-child centers, what are the similarities that they all have?
Yeah, so we're all community-based nonprofit organizations, and we all offer the same 8 core services. So that's within statute, and since the 80s, that's been within statute that we are tasked with providing these 8 core services. And I think the other ways that we're similar is that there's a network of parent-child center directors, and we coordinate regularly to talk about, okay, let's have one survey that goes out to all families across the state of Vermont. It's the same survey to see what they think about our services, to sort of evaluate, and then we bring those biannual results back to the table and sort of look at what programs are working, because not every parent-child center has the exact same programs within the 8 core services. There's some variation on how we want to use our grant funds and what the community needs.
Sure.
But ultimately, it's looking at those survey results, coordinating at a director level, and then looking at using our peer review process, which happens every 3 years, to engage stakeholders and community members and parents to say what's working well, and sort of gain feedback in that way.
Okay, so beside the 8 core services that the Parent-Child Center provides, what are some of the other things that might make our Parent-Child Center unique?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really unique about our center and just in general the flexibility of other centers too is to look at what are the specific needs of our community and how do we want to use that funding to address those needs. So, for example, a few years ago we were looking at children in childcare were parents, it's expensive, and parents weren't able to provide funding to the providers for co-pays, and so they're racking up copay bills, and that's sort of getting in the way of them to be able to focus on the other things they need to focus on to parent effectively. And so we use some of our grant funding to provide the providers with that money for the grant money. So we use grant money to pay for back copays for families, and so that they weren't sort of drowning in this debt, and they could think of other ways to focus their efforts. And so another example of this, that was one unique way of supporting families. Another that just recently happened this year is that we've recently, as a community, not just a parent-child center, but as a community, been getting calls that there's folks crossing the border, families, and they're seeking asylum or they're seeking an overnight stay on their next destination. So we secured a grant to help these families with some transportation from here to there, some brief short-term case management. We've even gotten backpacks for the kids if it's a long travel destination.
Sure.
and some distracting books and toys and water, and so again, just sort of creative ways that we can support families in a really flexible way that is sort of, I think, hidden to the community. They're not sure that who's doing it, but somebody's out there providing these prevention services, and it's us a lot of the time. Yeah, it's the Parent-Child Center.
And in general, with a lot of what the Parent-Child Center of NCSS provides, it's kind of like it's hidden, only because when we're now saying we're kind of like the tapestry of the community. I mean, we're like all
Everywhere.
throughout the community. And like I said earlier, where people may think when they drive by, oh, everything happens in these buildings that NCSS has, and as you know, that's a small fraction of the actual services that are provided within the buildings. But it is at a kitchen table, it is at a library, it's in a school, it's in a park, wherever.
Exactly.
And that's everywhere throughout Franklin Grand Isle County. So, yeah, you're right. So, how does Parent-Child Center play a role in primary prevention and addressing the social determinants of health?
Yeah, I think that the social determinants of health piece is that I think ties well into the 8 core services, right? So when we think about social determinants of health, it's how are we meeting families where they're at to ensure that they have, using a multi-generational approach, which all parent-child centers use, to look at the whole family holistically and say, what are the barriers to accessing care? What are the barriers to economic stability or housing security, or safe and and affordable housing paired with food insecurity? And so I think what we're doing at the Parent-Child Center is not just looking at the child and saying what's going on with the child. We're broadening that scope. We're looking at what is the parent is the one struggling to provide funding for the copays. So what does that mean for the kid? What are the implications for not being able to pay for childcare? It's not just about the money. It's about if the mom can't pay or the dad can't pay for childcare, then they can't go to work.
Yeah.
And the kid doesn't have access to high quality, affordable childcare to meet their needs for their social development and learning. So it can be a ripple effect. If you don't get in there early and you're doing the primary prevention work, the ripple effect is, you can see some real negative results. And luckily we have these in place. So the goal is to get kids off to a healthy start. And that includes looking at all social determinants of health and making sure that we're addressing those.
And when you talk about prevention, and so often there are many programs, use of tobacco, whatever. We talk about prevention programs that are trying to do and provide the information so that decisions can be made that hopefully will help somebody live a better life, a longer life. Same thing here where, what the Parent-Child Center is really all about are these prevention efforts, as you say, to get our youngest residents off on the right foot, and also to help them when they're facing challenging times. The thing that is so fascinating about these core programs that you have is they're all prevention-based, and they're critically important to the development of these young people. And you would hate to say that, there would come a day where there is no more or are no more prevention programs. So I think it's really a great testament to the network that over the years they've been able to show the value. Because a lot of times people look at prevention programs and they think in a year something's going to dramatically change, or in 2 years.
Yeah.
And as you know, it's a much longer runway than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
know.
I think that, when we think about prevention programs, it's not about, to your point, where are they in a year, which is, we might want to measure it that way.
yeah,
That could be
sure.
a measurable outcome that we're looking for. But what we're really looking for on the back end is this upstream prevention lens that you're looking at early identification. So you're identifying what the needs are. You're maybe doing assessments, maybe you aren't. Maybe you're just intervening because it's a financial issue, or maybe you're intervening because it's a developmental or behavioral issue. But whatever it is, it's that identification so that the issue doesn't persist or doesn't become, for example, a really complex medical need, or a speech issue doesn't become an impediment by the time they get to school. So it's really prepping families for the best case scenario given the circumstances that they are in.
So could you share some of the creative and unique approaches that you use in your programming?
Yeah, I think something that we've been doing, I think about our typical sort of written in stone home visiting programs like early intervention, early childhood and family mental health. All of those programs are able to reach families, which is wonderful. But I think in the last, and not just parent-child centers, but our DA in general has sort of pivoted and said, where are the families if they're, if we're not meeting them in their homes and we're not getting the referrals, where are they? So they're in pediatricians' offices, they're at libraries, they're at the local OBGYN office, because it starts in pregnancy, right? And so that's a big part of the Parent-Child Center is serving pregnant women. And so we have several embedded family specialists through our Dulce program that works with families up until the 6-month period of the new baby, doing the well child visits and checking in with the family. And we just recently partnered with NMC, the OBGYN office, to have a family specialist there to work with families in that prenatal period and to say, let's not wait until you have your baby to figure out what, as somebody who just had a baby, there's a lot that goes on in that, those postpartum months. And so how can we make that connection upstream? Again, think about proactively what would make the most sense for a family to get them off to the right start. So I think one creative way we've done that is just sort of met families where they're at. And another example of this is our connection with the library. So these are also, much like a parent-child center, physical service hubs for families, and we know that they're going there. And so we have great relationships with most all of our libraries in Franklin and Grand Isle County, and they sort of participate in what we call our family engagement program, which provides funding to libraries to host their own playgroups. So, if we want the community collaboration to happen, it doesn't always have to be our staff providing the services. Yeah. So we fund a lot of their playgroups and special events, and they'll say, hey, what do you think about this idea? And we'll say, that sounds great. We can have a staff there, or you can do it on your own. And it's just been a great partnership that really reaches families, especially in those rural areas.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, this being such a rural state, we've got to be thinking in those terms.
Yep.
So let's talk about the Parent-Child Center's role in addressing adverse childhood experiences, which is also known as ACEs.
Yeah, I think any sort of preventative measure, and research actually suggests that targeted preventative measures at reducing and mitigating the risk for ACEs is not only healthcare cost savings, but it's actually produces health outcomes that fare families much better than if we were not in there in the first place. And so that's not to say that if you're in a family that has exposure to ACEs that it's sort of a doom and gloom picture. I think it's actually quite the opposite, that the earlier you get in there and talk to families about safe and effective parenting and nurturing homes and safe environments and quality childcare and developmental milestones, and just getting in there and creating relationships with parents so that they can have relationships with their kids and have the energy and the ability to form secure attachments. That's really what it's all about. And so I think reducing what ACEs can cause really long-term chronic health conditions, and so we don't want to wait until issues are really bubbling up for families. We want to get in there and make sure that we're talking through what the issues are and identifying strengths at the same time.
Sure. And this gets back to something we haven't talked about here yet, but the fact that each and every individual that we serve, it is an individualized plan because everybody's different. Their circumstances are different.
Yep.
So it's really important that what we provide is not a quote-unquote cookie-cutter approach,
exactly,
but very individualized. So an incredible number of social connections are made each year through the events that the Parent-Child Center holds or does in collaboration with others in the community. Could you elaborate on some of how that happens and what it is?
Sure. So it's sort of a point of pride at the Parent-Child Center that we hold these events that really bring community members together, and they're very well attended. I think COVID sort of halted a lot of that for us and made us kind of have to narrow in on what are the events that are the most meaningful. And so in the past, we've had a collaboration with the hospital. The Healthy Hearts event was always really well attended, with a focus on heart health and prevention, but also bringing in that sort of early childhood fun piece. We used to host a Kids Fest that I'm hoping we can bring back in Taylor Park that had all of the community partners that work with young children present, and that was really fun. And then most recently, when we had to kind of shift from traditional, what we used to do is like a trick-or-treating around the 130 Fisher Pond building, we've now had as a trunk or treat outside, and that was sort of in response to COVID. And that has been so well attended that we've run out of things to give people at that event. So those are just sort of easy, fun things for staff to feel engaged. We often see a lot of our clients there who are really excited, but we also see community members who aren't clients, because you don't have to be a client of
Yeah.
NCSS to partake in an event or even really access parent-child center services necessarily. And so I think the hope is to do more events as we move into this post-pandemic world, and just foster those community connections, because we know it's so important.
Yeah, yeah, and you're right. You know, they are all so well attended. It's very, very important that those events do be held.
Yeah,
from
I
a
think that
community.
this trunk or treat was over 500 people. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
and it was, and the year before was good as well. But
Yes.
to your point, it grows each year. You know, by having the same event, the word gets out,
Yep.
and grows from there.
Yeah, and I think one of the nice things about hosting these events, for the trunk or treat, we get staff together and think about creative ways. It would be fun to just hand out candy because it's Halloween, but what can we anticipate are the needs of the community? And so we gave out hats and mittens and gloves and neck warmers, because we're getting into the cold season,
Sure,
and we
yeah.
know that that stuff's expensive. So that was just one creative sort of way that we can. Another way that we're present in the community that I think people are not aware of.
Yeah, yeah, so true. Let's now just look at a world where there were or are no parent-child centers. What would the community be like?
Oh, that'd be bad. I think, if there was a world with no parent-child centers, I think that families would naturally move to their natural supports, right? And that's what we hope is the goal once they transition out of services, that you use the people in your hub that are of critical importance. But I do think that it would be a real gap. And I think what we would see, to your point earlier, is not necessarily the short term, but the long-term implications of that are that maybe your developmental milestones weren't met at an early age, or maybe you didn't have somebody helping you financially with childcare, and so that sort of debt might be mounting, or maybe you didn't have anybody to come to your home and kind of talk through some things that are bothering you, or maybe you had a baby and you didn't have access to postpartum supports or to address your mental health needs. And that is sort of the snowball effect that we're trying to avoid. So and those are just off the top of my head 4 things that we help with. And as you said earlier, there's several programs. I could probably not even name them all. So I think it would be an increase in cost down the road. I think we wouldn't have kids that are thriving in the way that they are now thanks to these services. So it would be a real loss.
Yeah, it's always kind of, sometimes hard to put that hat on, but the reality is, that things would be different for young people and for their families,
Yeah,
certainly,
absolutely.
from that standpoint. So a couple months on the new job, in the new role, what has surprised you the most about taking over that role that maybe you didn't anticipate?
I think what was surprising to me is that it's this huge job that, I just had a baby, so people said, you're going to take on this huge job. How are you going to manage all of the things? And what I found surprising is that, I feel like I've been with the Parent-Child Center for 10 years, and that has certainly paid off. And I've been with the mental health agency for a long time as well. So everything has felt actually exciting instead of that I'm drowning in stress. So I think that, the relationships that I already have established was really helpful. And I think just being really passionate about the Parent-Child Center in general I'm surprised at how seamless it has felt. And I'm sure that's not without its struggles. But I think more than anything, it's just an exciting time to think about prevention work. I think people are really invested in it, and I'm excited to be at the forefront because there's so many ideas that we have to support families, and I think we can be really creative, and it's exciting to be part of something that is so flexible in how we can meet families' needs. So I think I'm just surprised that I'm not more, that it's more exciting than anything, I guess. Yeah.
Well, and the other thing, looking at it from the outside, is that, taking on the role is big enough, in the advancement in your career. But on top of that, as you stated, that's on top of having just had a baby recently. So that is a major life-altering moment as well. So you've had 2 really big events
Yeah.
occur within a short span of time.
Yeah, and I think more than ever, it's the right time for me to be in this role, actually, because I'm living it, right? Like
Yeah.
lots of parents are. I'm understanding the stress of parenting. It is a wonderful journey, and I really have loved every minute. But I also can now empathize as a person with a baby who has lots of natural supports and still could benefit from some parent-child center events like playgroups and social connection. And,
Sure.
I just think the value of it, it feels like the right time because I can really see the value of it. Yeah.
Now, for someone who may be watching and was not really too versed in what the Parent-Child Center offers, but is interested in getting in touch, what number do they call?
So they can call the NCSS main line, 524-6554. Is that right?
That would be it. Yeah. No. Now we're in a
Was
new
this a
world.
test?
We have to. Yeah, this is a test. In our new world, we can't forget to put the area code in front
Oh,
of
yes,
it.
you're right. 802. Yes, that's 802-524-6554. Call the front desk and ask for me. I'm happy to direct anybody to the services that are right for them.
And one of the things is being in the family center. That certainly is a facility that really is very welcoming for the work that you and your team does.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the first step is sort of calling and saying, "Hey, this is what I'm looking for," and no question is off limits, right? We can always find something for a family, and that's the great thing about the Parent-Child Center.
Well, that is terrific, and what a way to end to this month. So I want to thank my guest, boy, I can't speak anymore, Margaret Walsh, for being on the show today and sharing her insights on the Parent-Child Center of NCSS and the impact that the programming and services have on children from a very early age and their families. I also want to thank you, the viewer, for spending time with us again this month. You can learn more about NCSS and all of our programs and services by logging on to ncssinc.org. I'm Joe Helko, and I'll be back next month with another episode of NCSS Here for You.